Hi everyone, so I'm just going to do a quite belated response to a book chat from Misty the book rat, and she had, I think it was for June, it was underknown and underappreciated books, and I'm intending to try and catch up on quite a few of Misty's book chat videos and do some responses, but we'll see how we go. I've got a mishmash of books here, and some of them you may not think really count as being underrated or something, but for me, at least in my experience and stuff, I think they count. Also, some books that I want to mention aren't here, so I'll try and mention those first. Certainly The Little Girl Who Was Too Fond of Matches. What it classifies as, I have no idea. It's technically an adult book, and it's drama, maybe magic realism, sort of, but not really, and it's kind of got a fairy tale feel to it, but I don't know what the hell it qualifies as. It's by a French-Canadian author whose name I can't pronounce, but I'll link it in the doobly-doo. It's really, really cool, and really twisted and weird, and just lingers with you for a really long time, and it's one of the reading experiences that is really distinct in my memory and has stayed with me. So yeah, I just wanted to tell you to read that one, and I will certainly link it in the doobly-doo. I'm sure many people have read this one, but I just haven't seen many reviews, but I really enjoyed A Certain Slant of Light by Laura Whitcomb, and I believe that is there a sequel coming to this? There could well be. And when I was told that, I thought, but it doesn't need a sequel, and it doesn't really. It was in the YA section when I purchased it years ago, but I think it could also be an adult novel, I don't know. And it's sort of about ghosts, but not really. It's got a paranormal aspect to it, and it does feature some teen characters, so. But anywho, I really enjoyed the book, and I do love that it's using an Emily Dickinson quote as its title, so. Here's a good one if you really like period historical novels. The Journal of Dora Damage is a really, really good book. It's an adult book, and it's very detailed, and it's taking you into a world that personally I really honestly knew nothing about, and it's got a real feminist slant to it, but it's not heavy-handed. It's gradual and quite realistic in how it's handled, and it's about bookbinding and the practice of and profession of bookbinding in the 19th century, and it's fascinating. The detail and the atmosphere is really, really well created and maintained. It's not always a happy story, but it's really fascinating, and you're completely on the side of Dora throughout it. And the really, really sad thing is, there was apparently going to be maybe some companions or sequels to this book, but the author Belinda Starling passed away very shortly after. I think it might have even been before its publication, which is really, really sad. And I think she died very suddenly during an operation on something that was meant to be quite minor, so it's really sad. There's going to be no more books from her, but she did write this one, so if you can find the Journal of Dora Damage, do check it out for sure, especially if you like historical fiction. This is kind of a classic, I guess. I think it was written in the 60s, and it's called The Peacock Spring by Ruma Godden. I always pronounce the name wrong. And it's a coming-of-age story that's set in India, and I just found it really interesting, and I like that the character dynamics were, I think, quite different, and the ending isn't what you would expect it to be, and the tone is just, it's refreshing. It's a different take, and it's not overly sentimental at all with the characters or the situations, even though they seem in some ways to be kind of melodramatic or soap opera-y, but it never takes that tone with them, so it just makes it a different view on these things that we see happen quite often. So, but I really liked the approach it took, and yeah, and I honestly came upon this completely by chance. So, The Peacock Spring by Ruma Godden, whatever. Now, if you can get your hands on these, I really recommend them, but I do think they're only published in Australia, which is way sad and not fair. But Tales from the Tower Volume 1, The Willful Eye, and Tales from the Tower Volume 2, The Wicked Wood, edited by Isabel Carmody, are collections, anthologies of fairy tale retellings and short stories, and they're way awesome, and they're fantastic, and they're featuring really cool fantasy authors, and if you can find them, I really recommend them if you love your fairy tales, because they're great, and the covers are awesome too, and just, yeah, if you can get them, do. more Isabel Carmody. She is very well known, I know, for the Obed Newton Chronicles. I still think more people need to read them, though. If you haven't, absolutely pick them up. But the books that I really especially have loved from her, not more than Obed Newton, but that had more emotional resonance with me, have been the Legend Song books, and this is book 2 of the Legend Song trilogy, which is Dark Song, and the first one is Dark Fall, and they're bloody huge. The third one's not out yet. But if you can find those, they're excellent high fantasy with really interesting protagonists, and I connected to them emotionally much more readily and easily than I did with the Obed Newton ones, which it was more gradual delving into. But yeah, if you can find the Legend Song series, certainly pick it up. Another a sci-fi book that I think is underappreciated just because it had the misfortune of coming out around the same time as a really hyped one, which was Across the Universe, is Glow by Amy Kathleen Ryan, and it's the first in the Sky Chasers series, and the second one is out or coming out very soon. It's called Spark, and I want it so bad. And sadly it does have a similar kind of cover to Across the Universe as well. But I enjoyed Across the Universe very much, but this one struck a chord with me much more, and I found myself warming to the characters much more easily. And yeah, I just think if you liked Across the Universe, why the hell would you not read this? So find Glow by Amy Kathleen Ryan. Aussie authors, of course I was going to talk about them during this, but if you can find Lily Wilkinson's books for YA contemporary realism, they are really great. I love them anyway. They portray the kind of characters I'm interested in and I can empathise with, and situations that I can relate to, and I just really love them. I love her writing style. I love that she doesn't stick to YA cliches, and I just love her. So find Lily Wilkinson stuff. Pink and Love Shy and A Pocket Full of Eyes. Find them. Another Aussie author, or New Zealand author, I think she's New Zealand, which would make sense, is Karen Healy, who writes YA paranormal, supernatural fantasy stuff. We've got Guardian of the Dead and The Shattering, and they incorporate Maori, New Zealand folklore and mythology into them, and the characters are interesting and refreshing, and their dynamics are really cool between friends and partners and stuff, and I just like that there are different kinds of folklore and mythology woven into them. So find Karen Healy stuff. Just throwing things around. If we're going to talk classics, my two underappreciated Jane Austen picks that I really like are Northanger Abbey, which is the shortest and probably simplest of the Jane Austen books, but I love it for that reason. It's just short and sweet and simple, and I love Catherine as a protagonist, and it's fun. I have fun with it, and I really love Henry Tilney. Henry Tilney is my favourite Austen man, so suck on that, Darcy. Totally is. And then this one is Mansfield Park, which a lot of people do not like at all, and they especially do not like Fanny as a protagonist. I like her a lot. I can empathise with her. I have no problem with this story whatsoever. So give Mansfield Park some love, because a lot of people really don't like it at all, which is totally fine. But it gets bashed a lot out of the Austen gang. Poor Mansfield Park. If you like vampire books, then try and find yourself a copy of The Vampire by John William Polidori. I think I always say his name wrong, but it's the short story that kind of sparked what we know as the vampire these days in our cultural mindset, and it kind of gets overshadowed because it just happened to be created on the same night that Mary Shelley created Frankenstein, the infamous night with the stuck in the house with Byron and the tree caught fire and all that crap. So, but Polidori wrote The Vampire, and it's like the forerunner of vampire mythology, folks, so find it and read it, y'all. Another classic that gets overshadowed because it has a more famous musical and film counterpart is George Bernard Shaw's Pygmalion. It's a play, but it reads very easily, very, very easily. And it's fantastic, and if you know My Fair Lady, then you'll recognise almost all the dialogue, and it's still just as entertaining to read it in its original format without the songs, and you can notice how well the musical adapted this content into song form. So I just really love it. Pygmalion. Another one where the film is probably more famous than the book, because the book came after the film, to be fair, is The Princess Bride by William Golding, and it's got a really different tone to the film in its own way, but it's still very hilarious and funny, and the characters are just as great. So of course, if you love the movie, and who doesn't love the movie, then try and find the book, because it's fun times. Juliet Marília is quite well known in fantasy writing, and of course her Seven Waters series is probably her best known work, but if we're going to pick one of my favourite of what I've read of her so far, it's definitely Heart's Blood, and it is an adult fairy tale retelling, sort of historical novel, based around Beauty and the Beast, but it becomes very much its own story, and I love it, love it, love it, love it so much. Heart's Blood. In the YA sector, lots of people really loved Lani Taylor's Daughter of Smoke and Bone, and if you love that, you need to find her short stories, which are Lips Touched 3 Times, and it's a little anthology of 3 short stories. They're all fantasy-based with paranormal romance stuff in there, but they're beautifully written. There's illustrations and stuff. Really, really, really good. Excuse me. Another classic, if you love your fairy tales, you probably know all about the Grimms and Perrault and Hans Christian Andersen and all that kind of thing, but if we're going to go for yet another European author of fairy tales who you really should read, is Oscar Wilde, because he wrote stuff like The Happy Prince and The Nightingale and the Rose and things, and they're beautiful and sad and really poignant, and yeah, read them. Find Oscar Wilde's fairy tales. Now, here are 2 books that I've not yet read, but I understand are still quite underappreciated, and everyone tells me they're great, and I now own them. So, Lara will be so happy with me. I've got The Explosionist, Lara! I've got The Explosionist by Jenny Davidson, and it's like steampunk historical YA, and Lara says it's fantastic, and it sounds really innovative and different and cool, and just sounds great, so if you can find it, get it for sure, because Lara loves it. And then this one I've had for a while, but my friend borrowed it for like 1.5 years, and I started it and it sounded cool, and it's Tallow by Karen Brooks, who is an Australian author. It's a fantasy book, high fantasy, and I believe it's got a sequel out now which is called Voltaire, to my knowledge, and yeah, I remember when I started reading I thought this is very different. It's about candle making, sort of, but yeah, Tallow, again, it's an Australian author, I don't know if it's published worldwide. And I think that's all I want to say. Those are some of my underrated, underappreciated books that I've just grabbed. I'm talking fast. I'm going to go now. But do be sure to participate in this book chat stuff, because Misty does fantastic discussions. So, thank you, Misty. Goodbye, everyone.